this to me is like the really fascinating material.
We don't know what the answer is, but we're looking for patterns.
I think we're looking at kind of a type of cosmic alchemy.
The story slowly grew into business.
But still, a lot of people don't know that this technology actually exists.
The possibilities here are pretty mind-boggling.
We can't just believe that it was the work of these lone troubled individuals.
Play that song for Cobra Kai. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we do.
Rob has an 80s cover band, guys, that he does. So he's become well versed in the world of 80s music.
I have.
Adam, you play guitar too, right?
Nope, keyboards.
Keyboards, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I think Adam Sane is the only one who's not musically inclined here.
No, I am not musically inclined.
But he knows more about music history than the rest of us combined, probably.
What about that, really? I'm sure you know a little bit more, Rob. You actually deal with the people that you actually deal with the famous people.
The whiny artists.
So.
Yeah.
Well, we've pretty much started.
All right.
Okay.
Greg, I've taken a page from your book, man, and I've just started like starting the show instead of actually introducing the show.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you're the one that.
I like sometimes give a date stamp, and I sort of, if the person hasn't been on before, I give them a little bit of a bio. If it's somebody that's been on before, I usually forget to do their bio.
Yeah. Well, I just like the flow better, man, than trying to do it as like the radio show kind of format.
Yeah, people could read.
Oh,
They know
I've
what the
never
show's
done
about.
it like that. I think that's a waste. We're not radio, so we shouldn't be doing radio.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I was doing that for a while, man, but now
Yeah, you can tell when people suck when they try to sound too much like a professional radio show.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, it's podcasting. There's no real reason to do that stuff.
No, there's not at all. People don't, somebody isn't coming onto it like driving around their car and saying, oh, well, this looks interesting. I mean, they're going to come to your site because they want to hear it.
Yeah.
You can do
like
the intro with farting for 30 seconds and there probably more people would listen.
We could be like your show and just play the intro like 30 minutes in.
Yeah. Sometimes I forget. It's like, oh shit, we didn't do the intro. Yeah.
Which one do you want to hear? I'm partial to the It's Greg one myself. That's the one I'm partial to. Just because I've heard the,
Hey, it's Greg.
I was
stage so many times.
Yeah, exactly. I was real surprised, man, by one of the people that you put in the book, and that was Ron Ormond.
Mm-hmm.
Like that really surprised me. Which one of you guys wrote that one?
That was me.
Okay.
And the reason I did that or discovered the guy has to do with the origins of this book, which started, many years ago now, like 2010, 2011.
How long it took to get me to write anything?
Yeah. A dude named Joe Fex is a photograph collector, and in particular UFO photographs. And he's acquired different collections, restored them, and did this stuff. And he had these, it's called the Bob Beck collection of all these contactee photographs from the 50s and 60s. Beck went around to Giant Rock and different conferences. Anyway, one of the photos was Ron Ormond. I didn't know who he was, and I did a little research and found out who he was.
Yeah, so there is a connection to us here in Nashville with Ormond because he ended up here in Nashville. And my good friend, Dr. Future, who used to do the Future Quake podcast, he actually interviewed his son, Tim, who still lives here in Nashville. And a lot of that was in the context of Ron Orman's religious movies that he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, after the plane crash and subsequent conversion.
Yeah. Which was an airstrip here in Nashville where that happened. That's where he had the plane crash.
And I was just recently introduced to his film "If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do," which it's pretty classic.
Yeah, I was showing Serfiel some clips from that the other night because he teamed up with like this. I guess he was a Baptist preacher named Estes Perkel. And so he did like several movies. Like he did like that movie. He did The Burning Hell, The Believer's Heaven. There were like I think Jack Van Impe was in that one too. And so he did like 4 or 5 of these things, man. I mean, this is the same guy who did like, you know, The Monster and the Stripper and The Mesa of Lost Women. And so he had one of the guys that he worked with a lot was a guy named Cecil Scaife, who actually was like was one of the managers at Sun Records for a long time. And at Belmont College here in Nashville, there's actually like I think a building named after him. So, but the one interesting,
you're like a Ron Ormond expert.
Yeah, well, I know a lot about him. Like, well, actually, Dr. Future knows a lot about him.
Dr. Future really is.
But what's interesting is that you guys are familiar with Negative Land, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The song "Christianity is Stupid."
Yeah.
Okay,
Christianity is stupid. Yeah.
That's pulled from the Ron Orman movie, the "If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do."
It's like a re-education camp, and they're making the Christians watch or listen to something saying over and over again, "Christianity is stupid, communism is good."
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
But this part about him being anywhere near the contactee movement, I had absolutely no idea about that.
Well, like I said, I didn't have a clue who the guy was until I saw the photo, you know, and then did some more research on him and learned that, he was a movie producer back then. You mentioned some of those films. I haven't really seen any of this stuff. Mesa of the Lost Women and The Monster and the Stripper. Yeah. And he made a film called The Attack of the Flying Saucers, which apparently had a couple other contactees, Reinhold Schmidt and Daniel Fry in it. And actually, I've been contacted recently, and I forget the fellow's name. I have his emails. He's been trying to get a hold of these, and I think he's got a line on some of these UFO documentaries that were, kind of lost to the ages until now, I guess. We'll see what this fellow turns up with. But Ormond was a player. I write how he got involved in with Ray Palmer, something called in a Flying Saucer magazine, and he wrote this article called "I Found a Little Green Man," and you see the photo in the box, or a photo in the book where he's carrying this like beat up cardboard box that apparently carried the little green man. He has a cigarette in his other hand, so he was making the scene. And so that's Orman. I read the story. I found a little green man. I was able to dig that up, whatever old magazine it was in. Orman also claimed to be a member of the United States Air Force Auxiliary, that he was a colonel in the Air Force Auxiliary, and that he knew him and Kenneth Arnold were
really
supposedly associates, or they met. And that's where the little green man story comes in, because there's also stories that Arnold was doing some research into the whole little green man phenomenon.
He was also
at that time.
He was also good friends with Bela Lugosi and Ed Wood, too.
Well, that figures.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, they were both the B or C or D filmmakers back, no budget filmmakers back in the day. So, they, no doubt crossed some of the same paths or worked with some of the same people.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about you guys, like your idea for this book, which is called "A for Adamski, Is for Adamski: The Golden Age of the UFO Contactees." And I just want to get, like, what was your criteria for including certain people in this book? Why you ended in 1978? Why that date specifically?
Well, that was kind of my thing, and we didn't necessarily end on that date totally, but I wanted to come up with some type of, parameters. And the 78 was kind of like an arbitrary benchmark for me because that's when George Van Tassel died, and it seemed around that period, 79, 80, is when this whole Jerome Clark calls it the Dark Age of Ufology really got going with the underground bases, and that's when
the Roswell incident came out.
Mm-hmm, Roswell incident too. That's when Benowitz was started to get. So the stories of these underground bases and all this nasty stuff going on became the want to call it? Yeah, or the primary paradigm.
Yeah, the one that all the conventions were built around at that point.
Yeah. Last interview we did, Greg was talking about, I think he was asked the question, what was the period? And a lot of people probably see it mostly as the 50s and 60s, and that you could point at Betty and Barney Hill. They had their experience in 63, which was 63. Is that the right year?
I think 61.
I think so. Yeah,
61, I think.
Oh, 61.
Where you started seeing this demarcation between contactees and abductees, kind of different experiences, how they perceive the phenomenon. And that story really didn't get a lot of play, or it got a hell of a lot more play in 74, 75 with the TV movie about Betty and Barney Hill, which blew my mind at the time. And so once again, from 1952 to 78 is kind of arbitrary benchmarks, but they kind of want to have some parameters, or you could parameters, and be it would be never ending. But there's people that go beyond that date, like Omnik Onik. She was kind of beyond that period. There's been other contactees. They don't really get as much attention as they did back in the day.
Yeah, and what I want to try to do with this tonight is kind of talk to you guys about some of the more obscure ones, because we've talked about Adamski, we've talked about George Hunt Williamson, Van Tassel, some of those other guys, but we should mention, like, another reason I think you guys closed it out at 1978 was Van Tassel dies. So I guess that there's no more of those giant rock conventions. And, Greg, he took me out there back in June, but that had like those are very significant. And you guys kind of go over like kind of the significance of those giant rock conferences that they would have out there.
Should I? I've been there.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I started going out there in the maybe 89, and that was 10 years after anything happened. There was what happened was in early 50. What was the first one again, Adam? I keep forgetting. 53?
56.
56. Okay. What happened was Van Tassel met a prospector out there, Frank Kreitzer, and Kreitzer had been, the authorities arrived sometime in the early 50s to question him because he was German extraction, and I've actually heard that he might have been hiding Japanese families out in the desert so they wouldn't go to the internment camps, which was another strike against him, if that's true. So he became friendly with Van Tassel, told him about his operation out there and how he built a road out to the giant rock where he lived, and he'd hollowed out these rooms. Kreitzer was the one that built the airstrip and the rooms under the rock. So when Van Tassel got out there, it was BLM land, and I guess it was either kind of Wild West where they just set stuff up, or maybe he got in touch with the government and said, I want to lease this for $1 a year or whatever, and had the fly-in set up there, where people could fly in, pilots could stop by, and his wife would make them pie and hamburgers and stuff. And at some point in the early 50s, 52, 3, 51, I think maybe, he said he had his first contact with some alien called Solganda. And after that, starting in 1915, he put out a book called I Rode a Flying Saucer, which always makes me laugh. It's like, what did he put a saddle on it? And not I rode in a flying saucer, or I rode around in a flying saucer. No, just I Rode a Flying Saucer is the name of his first book. With this contact established, meaning, he'd actually met this person, or said he met this person from, I think he said it was Jupiter. The early contactees pretty much stuck with the solar system for their contacts, or the origins for their contacts.
Right.
Anyway, at that point, he started channeling. He would do channeling sessions under Giant Rock, became famous for that, and then started this interplanetary spacecraft convention in 1956. Adamski was there at the first one. I think Orfeo Angelucci, George Hunt Williamson, all the famous ones, and those went all the way up till 1977 or 8, when he was dead, but it was petering out anyway, because, as Jim Moseley said, a lot of, quote, hard-ass bikers, unquote, started showing up. So there was this, there wasn't this like space brother peace and love thing. There were, people out there cracking heads together and basically causing trouble. So it was probably on its way out anyway, but with his death, pretty much, his death also killed the Giant Rock spacecraft conventions, which were amazing at the time. I mean, it was like the Burning Man of the time. Burning Man for saucer heads.
Yeah, when we went out there with Walter, we went to the Integratron, and there were all these rocks. You said they were from Contact in the Desert. I mean, is Contact in the Desert, I mean, does it kind of continue on that tradition, or?
No, not really. I mean, it's a regular UFO convention, and it's got a heavy New Age thing, like most UFO conventions. They don't do it out there anymore. They've moved to more pricier digs at a kind of an expensive resort out near Palm Springs. So they're not
mental physics anymore.
No. We used to go to mental physics when I was a few years, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago, and do drugs.
Sounds fun.
Mushrooms, not dangerous. We weren't like out there like smoking meth or anything. We were out there doing mushrooms. It was a lot of fun.
I don't know if you remember this, but there was a big mushroom spray painted on the Giant Rock when we were out there.
Oh yeah, that's right. There's always something spray painted on there. I was out there within less than a week after it split open in 2001 or 2 or something like that, and I wrote a story about it. And yeah, there was graffiti on it already. I mean, within a day after it split, people were out there putting graffiti on it. And so they come out every once in a while, paint it over, and then of course they paint it again. So I've actually got pictures of being out there before it split. But yeah, now that big piece of it fell off because people kept lighting fires under it, and the crack in the rock, and there was anytime it rained or got cold, there was ice in there would water would get in there and freeze and make the crack bigger. So finally, it just cracked open and fell.
It was a sign, man.
Yeah, supposedly it was a sign, man, from either. There was this big story that it was prophesized in Native American lore. That
of course.
Anytime there's some like weird thing out in the middle of nowhere, it's like it's the Native Americans knew, the Indians knew about this.
They predict.
As far as I can tell, I could never find any Indian tribe that actually said anything about Giant Rock. Really, I could be wrong, but as far as I can tell, it's just spacey white people made it up. But Supposedly there's a petroglyph of a scorpion on it, although I've never been able to see it that clearly. I mean, there is some sort of marking on the rock about, 20 feet up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I guess I should have said something about it when we were out there so you could say, I don't see it.
I mean, it's a cool ass place, man. Just the whole area there. I mean, I'm from this part of this country, man. So like being out in the desert was like a novelty to me.
Oh yeah.
Totally different than anything you'd see in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm going out there tomorrow, actually.
Are you really?
Yeah. Barbara, Adam, Barbara Harris is giving a talk about Giant Rock tomorrow at the Morongo Basin Historical Society.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm going to go out there, and I'll probably stay one extra night in Pioneer Town and do some reading, which I haven't been able to catch up on. Stay at a place with no Wi-Fi. I think that'll help. And anyway, the other cool thing about the Giant Rock is that you can see, we saw this there, that big piece of concrete that used to be kind of the pilot's lounge and bathrooms and all that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think the restaurant might have been in there, but the real restaurant was the Come On In, which was a little tiny building behind Giant Rock, as you're coming up on it. Remember, I told you there used to be a tile floor there, and it's gone now.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that. Yep. Yeah,
because people have run. It's an off-road place now, so everything's torn up, and there's shotgun shells everywhere. And when I first went out there, that floor was about probably 75% intact still. So you could see and this happened over to what? 85, 88, 98, 2008. Okay, 30 years now. It's taken for that floor to completely be obliterated by people running over it and stomping on it and beating on it and, whatever the hell, peeling out on it with sand dune buggies and stuff. But yeah, those I have some of those tiles actually, because I thought it was important to keep that. It was otherwise just going to be ground into dust,
Yeah, it pretty much is now. Yeah.
So I have a few tiles that were trod by the likes of George Van Tassel and George Adamski. And
it's pretty cool when you think about it. What about the likes of Major Aho? Or any of them trod by Major Aho?
Oh yeah,
that's my little segue.
I would say Aho. Aho sounds too close to another word that I
Well, that was the deal, according to Jim Mosley. That was his, what they derisively called him. Some of the contactees was Major A-hole.
He was kind of contentious. I've seen him in action.
That's what I've heard.
So what was
his one time?
What was this whole thing with his spaceship that he was trying to build, or whatever it was, OTC X1?
Well, he assisted Otis T. Carr. That's where the OTC comes in, and Otis Carr supposedly had this spaceship he was constructing that he claimed, Carr did, to be a prodigy of Nikola Tesla. And so he started showing up on Long John Nebel's show, claiming that he was building this spaceship, the OTC X1 circular foil craft, it was called. And it had this propulsion system called the Eutron Electrical Accumulator, which sounds pretty bitchin'. And so they hyped this big launch that was going to happen in Oakland. Aho, however you want to say it, was involved. Aho was a player in the UFO field. He was always traveling around the country, and they teamed up at one point and started raising money for this project. And apparently Aho was going to be the co-pilot on this thing. So anyway, they hyped this for date I have here is April 19th, 1959. Really got a lot of press once again from Long John Nebel. He went out there for the big launch of this thing, but apparently it never got beyond a prototype, if he was even serious. And on the day of the big launch, Otis T. Carr was nowhere to be found. Left Aho holding the bag, and of course it never happened. It appeared to be a con job, and Otis T. Carr was he later got indicted, put in a prison for some amount of time for fraud due to this event. Aho was just seen as like a kind of a hapless dupe in the whole affair. But anyway, that's kind of the story of how Aho was involved with the OTC X1 debacle.
Really sounds like some of the To the Stars stuff.
Yeah.
I think they're supposed to build a spaceship too.
Oh, who knows what they're up to? I haven't heard that one about them building a spaceship.
Yeah, that was one of their ideas. They wanted to build some kind of interstellar craft or something. That was one of the first things that I think that was in that news conference that he gave. Like, we're going to build a spacecraft or, something like that. You haven't heard anything else about it, probably because I haven't said anything else about it since then. So
that's some serious coin there, building a interstellar spacecraft.
Maybe they're going to have to
raise more than they have thus far.
Yeah, that is very true. One I find particularly interesting in this book, and I didn't really know a lot about him, was Orfeo Angelucci. And it kind of seemed to me that he admitted later that he felt like this was going on not in reality, but almost like a spiritual experience. He's the only one, almost like in this book, that I think could really admitted that maybe there's a lot more going on than just physical stuff.
Yeah, I got the quote here. He basically, that's what he said towards the end of his life, and it's the last quote in the entry. He says, "What I think happened was that I dreamed a lot of my experiences, which came back through my subconscious in these visions."
I saw that show. Actually, I pulled that quote from the show. I remember seeing him speak. Yeah, he said it came back through my subconscious. I think he said as visions. But anyway, he was they had gone out, a local TV station, a public TV station, went out and talked to him. And I was just sitting there watching TV one day. And this documentary came on about UFOs and giant rocks. Like, whoa, wait, whoa. So I immediately hit record on the VCR and got most of the show. I probably still have it in the garage somewhere. I should digitize it.
I wrote this entry, but I stole that from you. Something else you wrote somewhere.
Yeah, I think so.
The show, it was a PBS documentary called California Saucers.
Ah, that's it. Yeah, you put that in there. Yeah. So, I had to watch it, and I remember seeing Angelucci in it. It's like, oh my God, Angelucci's around. And so within, I don't know, a month or two of that being on through various ways, methods, I found out where he lived. So I was going to go out and visit him, just go bang on his door, and he had died like a month before I started looking for him.
Wow, really?
Wow.
So I missed him by that much. Same with Gray Barker. I actually called his place 2 weeks after he died. His mother answered the phone. So Gray died last month. It's like, oh, geez, sorry. Oh, my God. So, because he put his phone number in his books, his home phone number, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
In Men in Black, The Secret Terror Among Us, which I think was his last book. He said, if you have any questions about Gray Barker or Saucerian Press, give us a call at, and it was his home number. His mom picked up the phone.
That's pretty much all the resources they had, though.
Yeah. And Angelucci, I found out where he lived. I found out, I didn't see his phone number. Somehow I found out where he lived, and I was going to go out there, and I don't know, I guess I saw his obituary or something like that, and it sucked. These people I want to go out and see, but who's Flying Saucers and the Three Men?
Albert Bender.
Albert Bender.
Mm-hmm.
Albert Bender lived in L.A. up till just about 3 or 4 years ago. And he lived right near the L.A. airport. And Jim Moseley published his address. I don't know why he did that. And I was going to go show up at his doorstep with Nick Redfern was here. And we thought about doing it. It's like, you know what? I don't want to go and bug him. He's an old guy, and we'll probably give him a coronary just by showing up and asking about UFO stuff.
I sent him a letter.
Did he answer you? No.
No, I got it returned.
Oh, okay.
Well,
yeah, the address was right.
Didn't Bender kind of put all that stuff behind him, though? Like, he didn't really want anything to do with it after a while.
He did. That's the other reason why we didn't want to bug him, because he got too freaked out by it, and then he moved to California, first to Bakersfield, and then to L.A., and managed a hotel in Bakersfield. I don't know what the hell he did here. And I still don't know where he's buried. I think he's buried out in California somewhere, even though he's from New Jersey. Or not New Jersey, I'm sorry, West Virginia.
Yeah.
Wasn't he? No.
I think so. I think so. I think that's right.
Yeah. Where he had his chamber of horrors or whatever. Anyway, he moved out here and became the head of the Wolfgang. Oh, who was the composer in the films?
Mozart?
I can't remember. No. It was somebody else. Yeah, it was Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, the composer of 1950s. Anyway, I can't remember the name of the composer, but he became he ran his fan club. I found, we should get back to the book, but I was at the the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences library once, and I found an old issue of Variety magazine. And there was a picture of Bender standing on Hollywood Boulevard in a big trench coat with sunglasses on, because they were dedicating a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And I guess he had campaigned to do it. And so here's this guy that wrote Flying Saucers and the Three Men and started the whole Men in Black thing, standing on the Hollywood Boulevard in trench coat and sunglasses, getting as a fan club guy, getting this guy's star on the Walk of Fame. Very weird, just out of context. I published it in Excluded Middle. I published the picture.
Another one I found interesting, guys, was Michael Barton. This was
Michael X.
Michael X, yeah. Let's talk about him for a little bit.
Well, he's a pretty obscure one. It's another one of these guys. When I was going through these photos in the collection, one was for Michael Barton, a.k.a. Michael X. And I'd never heard of him before, but his story is, like a lot of the contactees, he got turned on by, went out to giant rock conventions and met with George Van Tassel and started having his own experiences with the Space Brothers, using a method that he used called telethought, which found a way of meditating or something to contact the Space Brothers, not unlike a lot of their contactees. And then you'd see him on the lecture circuit back in the day. He went to a lot of Dant and Fry's understanding meetings there in L.A. and would speak, and started producing a bunch of different writings and pamphlets on UFOs. And most notably, he was the first one, at least that I'm aware of, who was talking about the connection with flying saucers and Hitler, and wrote perhaps it was the first book, it was more like a pamphlet in 1969 called "We Want You, Is Hitler Alive?" that had once again explored the whole Nazi UFO angle, and that Hitler had been was now hiding in Antarctica and had a fleet of flying saucers or something. I used to, in the tabloids in like the 1970s, you'd see these, and I was kind of fascinated by that whole thing. And so that was kind of his claim to fame. And apparently, Tim Beckley shared the story with me that perhaps through looking into some of these areas like Adolf Hitler and UFOs, he somehow conjured up the darker side of UFOs and phenomena, much like Albert Bender perhaps did. And I can read maybe I'll read the little passage to you here if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, no problem.
If I can get to the right place here. And Tim Beckley shared this story with me. Beckley, like in the late 90s, 2000, this Michael Barton was still around, but he left ufology years before and now was a UPS driver. And so Beckley wanted to republish some of his stuff. And at that time, Barton shared this experience with him, and it was the reason why he left flying saucer research. And I'll read from the book now. During one of his meditations, Barton received a mental message to meet at a secluded spot in the Mojave Desert for a face-to-face with his otherworldly contacts so they could lay some, quote, important information, end quote, on him. After arriving at the desert rendezvous point, Barton sat waiting in his car when he noticed a glimpse of something in the distance and assumed it was the ET saucer arriving. As he walked toward the object, a sudden sense of dread overtook Barton, and an inner voice instructed him to retreat. Just before he turned around to hightail it, Barton caught a glimpse of someone partially concealed in the underbrush lowering a rifle, which he now realized was the object that had glimmered in the sunlight. Afterwards, Barton speculated that some Illuminati-like secret society had somehow hijacked his telepathic transmissions in order to set up the ambush. Not long after, Barton left ufology in fear of his life to become a UPS driver. So in the early 2000s, I was mentioning this before, Tim Beckley tracked down Barton in regards to publishing some of his old books, and Barton consented with the caveat that his Nazi UFO titles be excluded from the mix. To this end, it could be speculated that the perceived threat against his life, which prompted his sudden ufological departure, was somehow related to Hitler's flying saucers in Antarctica.
Iron Sky.
That's the story of Michael X.
He just got super freaked out, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was always that paranoia was building over time, probably because that's the reason he used the name Michael X for many years. He didn't want whoever to know who he was. He didn't want them to figure out who he actually was.
Them with a capital T.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was Max Steiner. That's the guy I was trying to think of, that the film composer. Sorry.
Oh, okay. You threw me off with Wolfgang. That's what it was. I was like, what?
Yeah, I know. It's just some other silly, some German name, but it was Max Steiner. It was the guy that Bender was interested in. Yeah. He went right off UFOs and right onto film composing music for some reason. Oh, probably because he was all into the weirdy, scary stuff. So he probably would play the music in his chamber of horrors room that he used to use to try and scare people.
I'll bet there was a theremin.
I hope so.
In his brain, at least, yeah.
Yeah, I want a theremin. Gorightly has a theremin.
Really?
I do.
Oh,
he does.
Awesome.
I've tried to play Telstar on it before.
I haven't devoted enough time to it to do anything cool on it yet, but one of these years I'll break it out and start playing around with it again.
I think you should play it on my show just for 2 hours for just a solo.
In the background, yeah.
We thought about doing that for this show, having like a special where we got one of Surfy L's friends that's super into electronic music. Just make a bunch of weird noises in the background.
The giant modular synthesizer.
Yeah.
or have a guest on that just talks about New Age stuff, and every time that you ask them a question, as soon as they start talking in the background, you hear woo.
You know, we didn't discuss it in the book, but Desmond Leslie, who plays a big role in all this with writing the book with Adamski, The Flying Saucers Have Landed. He produced some experimental music, and I have it somewhere. It's been a while since I listened to it.
Yeah. I've got. I think he put out one record. I got the whole record on MP3s. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's like, this is the guy that worked with Adamski. It's actually pretty good stuff. It's competent.
Yeah.
It's all like electronic type of music.
Yeah, but it's very early. It must have been like from the 50s, I think. It's been a while since I listened to it, but I remember it was pretty cool.
Yeah, the record was called Music of the Future.
Sounds very cool.
Appropriate.
I mean, wait, you can hear part of it. Can you hear any of it? That's Desmond Leslie's music. Anyway, that's what it sounds like.
What was the date on that? Do you know, Greg,
I don't have the date on it. Although there was a re-release of it in 2005. Desmond Leslie, Music of the Future. If you look that up, it's probably sometime in the early 60s. Can anybody look it up while we're talking?
Yeah,
I can.
Rob's on it. Rob's on it.
Thank you.
So Harold Burney, this one really made me laugh.
Sure, a lot of them made you laugh.
Talk about odd ways to try to leave your wife.
Yeah. So I need to give a nod to Nick Redfern. I think he probably the one who dug up a lot of this stuff initially through FOIA requests or files from back in the day, the FBI files, having to do with this guy Bernie, who was a consummate con man, and in the early 50s, when this whole contactee scene started, Harold Burney thought he'd get involved and try to profit from it in some way. And so he claimed that at the time he had a business that he called the Burney Corporation to make antennas, TV antennas, I believe. It was early in the early days of televisions, but it all seemed to be pretty much a con. And anyway, brought in an older lady, what was her name, to be his secretary and get her to invest. And somewhere along the line, he claimed that he had been contacted by the military himself, and high executives from Westinghouse had been called together to meet with a very important visitor who turned out to be a representative from the planet Venus, whose name was Prince Uccelles. I can't even pronounce the name. Who knows how it was pronounced? Uccelles. And he started sharing, this information with his secretary and another elderly lady who invested money that he had joined into this business arrangement with Westinghouse and the Prince from Venus to basically bring some of this amazing Venusian technology to Earth. And he actually wrote a book about it that nobody's probably ever seen. I think if I can find here, it was called My Visit to Venus or something like that.
2 weeks on Venus.
Yeah. And
got a timeshare.
God, it was always Venus. Why was it always Venus?
Well, that was the early planet. It was primarily Venus, maybe because it looked like the best option that could support life, maybe Venus or Mars.
It was blue.
And so anyway, he apparently, Mr. Bernie, went to Venus on several occasions and disappeared. At one point, it later appears he was using it as a pretext to desert from his wife, and his wife received actually a letter written by the prince saying that now Bernie was laying in state in Venus, and he was seen like some great ambassador, diplomat, and highly revered on Venus. Anyway, they later found him on Earth, and at the end of the day, I'm looking in the book here, he was in March of 1957, he was arrested on charges of wire fraud and interstate transport of stolen goods. Not sure what that was, but and he bilked investors to the tune of $58,000, which was a good amount. Convicted in December 1957 and sentenced to prison for a term of 20 months to 5 years.
Oh, well, I got here his the album Music of the Future. He finished producing it in January of 1960. It was licensed.
Oh, pretty early.
Yeah, it was licensed and used on some early Doctor Who episodes, but it wasn't commercially released until 2005.
Yeah.
Which is where I finally picked it up. Yeah, I got a CD of it that I ripped, and I've got the entire album. I've never played it. I think I should play it on my Weird Music show at some point.
I feel like you got to be in the right mind space for that.
You kind of do.
I think I might know how to get there.
Here's another one that's this one's kind of more like a religious experience, kind of Michael Cecil.
These are all mine.
Yeah, they're all Adams.
I think we got some of yours, Greg. I think I've got some.
Oh no, I don't mind. I've taken plenty of chances to speak more than I should, so please go ahead.
The Michael Cecil, he's that's a very bizarre one. Let's see, what did he call his book? My Trip to Hell on a Flying Saucer.
Oh, is that Round Trip to Hell on a Flying Saucer?
Yeah, Round Trip to Hell.
I love that title. That's one of my favorite. I have it too. Just for the title. I've never even opened it.
Yes, you have. We've opened it together. Yeah, it is a bizarre book. The whole story is rather bizarre. Even there's some illustrations in the book that's like, wow. Because first he, and this happened in Bakersfield, California, of all people, and where Mr. Cecil saw a UFO one night, and he described it as he could actually see into it, and there were some odd-looking. He said, what did he say? The 2 men at the controls were dressed in odd-looking headgear and uniforms, and that the craft projected a 3D holographic image of a phantom city. And what else did it say about this? So, that's kind of a weird one right there, that the craft was projecting a phantom city. Not your typical UFO sighting, but these ETs or whoever the heck they were showed up at his place of work, and apparently he ran an auto shop. And I did some research later, and as of a few years ago, the auto shop was still around under his name, most likely operated by his family members, or he might have sold it. But yeah, the dude indeed had a. Actually, I think it was an auto body shop. But anyway, these ETs showed up out of the blue one day, and they just hung around. They didn't say anything to him. He kind of acknowledged their presence. They had, shared some telepathic thoughts, and Cecil went about his business. He said they were dressed in tunic-like outfits with hoods and moccasins. The two men didn't really have much to say, but what they did say, they did telepathically. And even though he was startled by their appearance, he noted that the men seemed to be, quote, nice. And had beams coming out of their eyes. What's
that doesn't
cool,
sound
though,
nice to me.
What's cool, though, and I saw when I was at Greg's looking at the illustrations in the book, I had an illustration of this, that on one occasion he was able to observe green bubbles inside their bodies, which was pretty cool if you look at the illustrations in the book. And he also said that he smiled a lot and possessed remarkable minds. So those are the, initially those are the entities he made contact with. But then after that, his story got increasingly stranger when he was, and it all culminated with this flying saucer trip to hell, which I'll read from the book here and make it a little easier. He didn't consider this experience of physical reality as his body was still at his Bakersfield auto shop, but during the course of the trip, he would occasionally snap out of a trance and answer the phone or complete some other task. However, once the task was completed, Cecil would again resume his flying saucer trip that apparently happened in mental space, though it seemed totally real to him. Anyway, Planet Hill, once he got there, lived up to its reputation. There was a burning lake in which the deads in their coffins were being cast into the burning lake, and only to emerge as tormented souls on fire, I write, screaming in flesh-searing agony. Anyway, I guess Jesus showed up at some point, and everything was all right, and he was transported back to his auto shop. And this all happened, going from one page to the next, over the course of 4 days, he said, although the clock on the wall indicated he'd been gone for only 4 hours.
Here's the part that I found.
Once again...
Sorry, go ahead.
I pulled it down off the shelf here, so I've actually got the book. I was looking through it. Go ahead.
Well, the part that I found interesting was Cecil's strange experience culminated with an apparent flying saucer trip to hell, an experience he didn't consider a physical reality, as his body was still at his Bakersfield auto shop. During the course of the trip, he would occasionally snap out of his trance to answer the phone or complete some other task.
Come on, don't tell me you haven't had days like that at work.
However, once the task was completed, Cecil would again resume his flying saucer trip that, although apparently transpiring in mental space, seemed totally real. Hold on a second, guys. I got to answer the phone. I got a business to run.
And this guy wrote this whole book about this crazy experience.
Yeah, round trip to hell in a flying saucer. My edition was published by Roof Hopper Enterprises in New Zealand. Yep. Adventure is no novelty to Cecil Michael of Bakersfield, California, whose entire life has been spent, both on the job and during leisure time, in exciting pursuits.
Listen.
I imagine the book is very, very rare.
It's also very, very short. It's 65 pages. That's like a children's book.
Oh, it's a pamphlet, essentially. Yeah,
it's essentially a pamphlet. Yeah. First New Zealand printing by Roof Hopper Enterprises, 1971.
Okay, so
I see. Round Trip to Hell, a Flying Saucer, first published by Vantage Press in New York and copyright 1955. So I've got a late edition of it.
Who wrote the entry on Buck Nelson?
I think that was me. Yeah, that was.
Okay, let's talk about Buck Nelson and Big Bo and all that good stuff.
Little Bucky.
Little Bucky. Yeah. Which you got a picture of him next to Truman Bethram of the.
Yeah, they look like a couple of farmers. It's great. Yeah, he was the Venusian dog hair guy. I don't think we put the picture in there, but there's like a classic picture of him with a sign for one of his conventions he had at his farm. And it says saucer convention or flying saucer convention. The S is written backwards. And he was always in his overalls. I think he's wearing them. I think they're Lee overalls. Wow. Way back when. His contacts, his UFO contact, his space brother's name was Bob Solomon. I don't know where he got that name. Yeah, it wasn't like Solganda or Orthon or anything like that. It was Bob Solomon. And he had a friend that was actually from Earth named Little Bucky at a 385-pound, I don't know how they got the 385, but space dog called Big Bo.
They had to weigh him when they got on the ship. I remember reading that.
Oh,
in the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess there was a scale on the saucer that was measured in pounds, or maybe
for the flight manifest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to make sure you can clear those scales on the interstellar highways.
Yeah, I read through Nelson's book. I found a copy of his book. My Trip to Mars, the Moon, and Venus. The thing that kind of surprised me, I didn't really know about until I actually started reading it, was that he was happy to see that people on Mars practice racial segregation, and that they all had their own area on Mars where like different Mars races lived, and in this way they were all happy and could live apart. I don't know about together. They could all live on the planet with no problem. The people of Venus had no roads because they had hovering vehicles, no police force, no jails, no government buildings, and no wars. And the ruler of the planet was actually wore overalls too. So Buck Nelson thought that was cool.
See, segregation works.
Yeah, so he's segregation solves all problems.
No Martian race mixing.
No Martian race war. Exactly. Yeah, that was the only statement he ever made. Was that book? It was one thin book from 1956. My Trip to the Moon, Mars, and Venus. Later, somebody said that Nelson got to meet President Eisenhower, and the doctors learned how to do open heart surgery from Nelson, who was told how to do this by the Space Brothers. Buck Nelson, like a lot of these people, were quite hooked into the secrets of the space people and how they interacted with the government, and how had to keep their secrets. And also the other famous thing about Buck Nelson is he either surreptitiously, I think that the hair just fell off, but he got hair off of Bo, and would sell it at saucer conventions as Venusian dog hair. Although I think somebody figured out it was pink or purple acrylic hair like you used to get on those little like troll dolls. So it was never analyzed. I don't think, but he was selling. I would love to have a pack of that Venusian dog hair. He probably put them in little like wax paper packets and with Scotch tape on them and sold them that way. I mean, that's in my imagination, that's what they were. And you'd have to like kind of rip the thing open to take a look at the Venusian dog hair.
I have some I can sell you.
Oh yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
How much?
It's going to cost you.
It sounds like a name of a weed strain or something. Venusian dog hair.
It should be. It should be. I went down and got some Venusian dog hair wax. Dude, it was amazing.
Oh man, you got to try the Venusian dog hair, bro. It's better than anything.
It's pretty smelly, but it's like it'll put you on another planet, dude. Oh, he also said that the space people had a book machine that would read any book placed on it, or play music, or show any pictures contained in the book. Basically, it was like an iPhone with Audible in it or something like that. So anyway, he's Buck Nelson was. I mean, he probably. I mean, you see pictures of him. It's like you look at him and he looks like a cartoon of a hillbilly. It's kind of frightening that he could be so typical looking. But yeah, he lived out in the middle of nowhere, out in
the Ozarks.
Arkansas, the Ozarks. Mm-hmm. I mean, he looked like a hillbilly from the Ozarks.
But he was a hillbilly from the Ozarks.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's cool about a lot of this is it really gave a lot of people the opportunity to just totally reinvent themselves. And, it seems like they really had a blast, if anything.
Yeah. Well, the thing I like about a lot of these contactees is like they would just present. I don't know. I think probably some of them knew they were lying through their teeth, but I think most of them didn't. They just kind of believed their own story, and just the honesty of, I don't know, the honesty in the way they thought they were presenting it, and the total acceptance of people back then about what was going on. This was before the internet, so you had to really dig for your weirdness. Mm-hmm. And so this is like a unscheduled, unadvertised kind of social movement. Which is probably why the government kind of got interested and thought that, because a lot of these people were saying that people on other planets had a communal type of existence.
Oh yeah,
where there was no communal type existence, where there was no money and everybody was taken care of, and so that kind of worried the FBI. And there's ample evidence that they were out there taking a look at these people to make sure they weren't outer space communist agitators,
space hippies.
Yeah, they were goddamn space hippies. Yeah.
Here's one that I found particularly interesting. It's a short entry, but on Omnek Onek, and at least the body she inhabited was from my hometown. So, found that particularly interesting to me. I had never heard of this person before, at all.
Oh, from Chattanooga, you mean?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Omnek Onek. I wrote an article on her at UFO Mystic a long time ago. It was called Omnek Onek, the Hot Venusian.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were a few, not too many female UFO contactees, but Omnek Onek was one of them. She said that she inhabited the body of a girl who died in a bus accident in Chattanooga in 1955, and then grew up. It grew up as that girl, except she was from Venus, and then in the early 90s, I think there was a book called "From Venus I Came" with a picture of her on the front cover, and most people would buy it just for the cover because it's like it's a really beautiful girl on the cover. If everybody from Venus looked like that, I'd have bought it too. A lot of these contactee books are really expensive now. But sometime in the last 20 years, somebody realized there was a market for these things. So, and then plus with eBay and AB books and Bookfinder and all that, these prices were established. But that's the only book she put out, and I think it was one of those Wendell Stevens books. So they all have basically the same cover with the same font on them, and one image and like a flat color cover and like yellow title. And she also, another thing I found when I was doing research on Omnek Onek, which I didn't know when I first wrote the article, was that in 2008 she her former husband wrote an article about her called "My Ex-Wife Was Born on Venus," and said that they got. I'm not going to read through what I wrote here, but apparently he said that he met her when they were hippies, like in the 60s, I think. Yeah, middle 60s. Got married, and then after a while, I think she started claiming that she's like, look, I'm from another planet, and that probably freaked him out a little bit. They got divorced. The cool thing is that he wrote the article, and he said, you know what? I actually think she was from Venus. She was like, she was totally committed to it. She was weird enough that she could have been from Venus. And she moved to Europe for a while, and I guess got a following there. And then sometime in the early 90s, she was actually at one of those Laughlin conferences, the International UFO Congress, when Bob Brown ran them. And I believe I saw her there. And she still looked pretty good for her age. I guess she was born in probably around 1950 or so, maybe a little bit before, a baby boomer. I think the trail's gone cold on her, but I think recently, what did I say here? 2016, she was on a TV show and was talking. I saw a clip of her talking. She has 3 grandchildren, 4 grown children, and she appeared on video as recently as 2016. So I think she's still around, but not in the greatest of health. But I never read From Venus I Came, but it was basically. I came from Venus. We don't have any wars there. We can take a good lesson from the space people. That's basically most of what contactee literature is. This planet sucks. Space people know it sucks. And if we took their advice, everything would be great. And they're just trying to help. And why don't we listen to them? And I that's pretty much what Omnek Onyx message was. And for a while, people were listening to her. Like I said, there's hardly any female contactees. I think we located a lot of them for this book. Molly Thompson was another one of my favorites, who I'd never seen really entered as a contactee in any of the literature.
There were a few couples too, right? I thought that was cool. If you could convince your spouse to go along with you on this on that journey, I mean that's some relationship goals there. Me and Adam were talking about.
Yeah.
I think it broke up as many couples as it formed because Truman Bethram left his wife for Aura Raines, and who was the other one? Howard Menger. He left his first wife and then married Connie, and they were together for the rest of their lives. He was kind of an unstable one. I think he got in trouble for like waving guns at people every once in a while until he finally calmed down. Mosley said that he plugged in one of his free energy devices. I don't know why you would plug in a free energy device in a hotel, I guess to get it going. But it was in a hotel somewhere in Florida at some convention, and Mosley said it blew all the fuses in the hotel.
I also read another anecdote where Menger was on Long John Nebel, and he brought some free energy device or something that broke while he was displaying it.
Yeah, there's a picture of him somewhere with it. He's like looking at this thing. It looks like this little 3-pronged thing that just spun on an axis on a little stand. That's probably what broke.
It just fell apart as he was explaining how it worked to.
He also put out a record album called Music from Another Planet, which is amazing.
God-awful.
Amazingly god-awful. It's amazing to me because not too many people, with the exception of Molly Thompson, ever did music, contactee music. And I've described the music. I think he just played it on a home Hammond organ or something. To me, it sounds like depressed organ grinder music. That's basically what it sounds like to me. But the whole first side is just him saying, "My name is Howard Menger," and saying, "It's in this
music I'm channeling from Venus or whatever."
Yeah, he said the story I am about to relate to you is based on true facts, and there's all this echo in his voice and everything. And he talks about how he met his first contact and how she was a beautiful woman, and and that he was walking through the woods and boarded a ship, and one of the people on the ship had a keyboard and showed him how to play, even though he never knew how to play a keyboard before. It's just the most normal, maudlin, dumb music you could ever imagine, but apparently it was channeled straight. I mean, it was brought through straight from the space people. So the entire second side of the album, like the first side is like 10, 12, 15 minutes of him telling his story. And the other side is this strange, echoey organ grinder, accordion sounding music. It's just, to me, it's amazing to have these documents of the time of just people talking. And plus you get to find out how he pronounced his name. Also, there's recordings of Adamski I have, and he calls himself Adamski.
I've heard that. Yeah. So another female one, Ruth Norman. Now,
oh God, Ruth Norman. Yeah.
I don't know I know that you went there, Greg, to the Unarian, because you got a picture of yourself in there, but there's like a movie that's on YouTube that you can find. It's one of their Unarian movies. Like, it's some crazy stuff, man. I mean, just some of the craziest stuff. And I was talking about Ron Ormond. I think it's called
The Arrival.
Yeah, I was talking about Ron Ormond earlier. It was done in the
80s with crappy effects. Go ahead.
Well, I was talking about Ron Ormond earlier, and I was telling you about the Believer's Heaven, which you can find a clip of that on YouTube as well. And that kind of reminds, the thing that it most reminded me of was the Unarian movie from the 70s.
Yeah, it's that I remember. I don't remember where I saw that first. Maybe they showed it to me when I went and visited.
Yeah.
The first article I ever wrote about anything, I think of anything. I mean, not even just UFO stuff, but ever. In 1987, I went there, and they were like, everybody there was so nice, it was almost embarrassing. It's like almost made me want to join. It's like, wow, these people are really cool.
That's how they suck you in, man.
Yeah. They're completely nuts, but like they're the nicest people some of the nicest people I ever met. They showed me the headquarters and showed me all the books. They gave me a stack of books. It's just like probably 10 books. I still have them. And they showed me their video production facility, which is all 3/4 inch tape at the time. And they had all the right equipment and everything. I already was working in video at the time. It's like, wow, they spent some money on equipment to produce their films. Their whatever the stories that Ruth Norman channeled. She was, I think she had 3 failed marriages or something. Born in 1904, died in 1971. Oh no, that was her husband, Ernest Norman. She met him, I believe, during World War II when he got a 4-H or something like that, and he was giving psychic readings during World War II. They met in 1954, and Ernest was channeling by that point. So Ruth Norman would type up his channelings, and they sold these books. And sometime in 1956, they wrote their first book. The first channeled book, The Truth About Mars. Ruth Norman channeled for the rest of her life. I mean, they probably produced 100 books or more. They must have given me half the books they had at the time, because they gave me quite a stack. And they ended up in San Diego, actually east of San Diego in El Cajon, which is a community in the east side of San Diego County. Ernest basically ran the show until he died in 1971. Ruth ascended the throne and became Archangel Uriel. Mm-hmm. At least that's what she said her name was, or her reincarnated name was. What the belief of the Unarians is almost kind of a little like the Scientology thing. You were born on another planet, and you have to work out all your karma that was incurred in your other lives on other planets. And if you were a bad person, you've incarnated on Earth so that you can work out that karma and become a better person. So everybody there was their whole thing was whatever psychological problem they had, whatever it might be, was basically because they had a bad life on another planet a long time ago. And then somehow Ruth Norman would help them figure out.
Yeah, that's the theme of that movie. Yeah.
Where they came from and what their karma was and what they were trying to work out, how they, they're just trying to help. I mean, it sounds totally insane, but a lot of these groups, the Aetherius people are like that too. George King's group, they're all just, they're really nice. And the thing that really draws me to the groups like those two that are still around, that began in the 50s, is that they could not give less of a crap what you think of them, and they could not give less of a crap if you join them or not. They really don't care.
Yeah, they're not like Scientology.
Just come and join us if you like it. If you don't, that's fine too. And if you join us and it's not for you, well, good luck.
They're not going to hunt you down. No,
I mean, how much cooler could you get than that? So Space Brothers must be doing something right. In 2001, they did Unarian said the space people would arrive in these giant ships and like stack up like a big layer cake on this property they bought in East San Diego. Of course, that didn't happen. So as far as I can remember, it's just kind of one of those, well, you know what? The Space Brothers decided it wasn't time. Because people actually drove out there in 2001, I think on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, and sat out there at this empty field that they bought out east of San Diego to wait for the space people, and they never came. So they're still waiting. They used to produce some videos on a show. They had a show on cable TV in San Diego, and they would, when Ruth Norman was alive and well, she would come on and give talks and speeches and lessons on the show that they produced out of the headquarters.
Imagine seeing that high as hell at 3:00 in the morning.
Shit, you wouldn't even need to be high.
Well, the Ruth Norman stuff, Greg, I've known about that stuff for a while because I actually got this book from a bookstore a long time ago that had a cover picture of her on it, and it was a book called Kooks.
That's great. I wrote the entries in that for that was who I wrote the article for.
Really? You wrote it for that book
magazine?
Yeah, I have that book at home. Awesome. That's
me. Eutherius and Aetherius. That was my first article, and I wrote it for Donna because I saw her book, her magazine on the newsstand, and I wrote to her. I looked up her phone number in Boston, and it was her. And I called her up. And I said, "Can I write an article for you?" And she said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And she paid me, and it was amazing.
I brought that book in Atlanta like 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah, it's a classic. Feral House.
Oh, is that Feral House that put that out? Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yep.
She came out and visited Parfried when she was out here. We kind of hung out. I'd never met her, and I met her when Kooks came out, and it was, I'd known her since the magazine. So the book came out like 10, 15 years later. So I finally met her and hung out.
Let's talk about a couple more. One that surprised me as an alien contactee, because I think of her in a totally different context. Marjorie Cameron.
Yeah. She was another one. Initially, I probably wouldn't have put her in there, but then other information surfaced, in the last 2 or 3 years. I thought, it looks like she might be a fit because one of the reasons is she was friends with George Van Tassel, I learned, which just blew my mind. And later came across a photo, which is in the book, of her standing right before a giant rock. So there was that great connection. But according to the lore surrounding her and Jack Parsons, Parsons was doing the whole Babylon working thing with L. Ron Hubbard. This was like kind of just at the beginning or prior to the contactee movement in the late 40s, where legend says that while they were out conducting this ritual in different places, including the Mojave Desert, that they made contact with some type of entity. Some sources, like Jim Brandon in Weird America, I think it was, or someplace, suggested it was Venusians. I haven't seen a lot of confirmation on that, but that would put Parsons and Hubbard right into the contactee camp if they were contacting Venusians in the late 40s, early 50s. And that during this period, Marjorie Cameron came on the scene and supposedly showed up on Parsons' doorstep one night just out of the blue, and they became an item. And
his Scarlet Woman.
Yeah, to play the role of the Scarlet Woman in the rituals, it was basically they were calling down a magical child into the womb of this the female participant in the Babylon working, who she didn't know it at the time because they didn't tell her, but Cameron became the Scarlet Woman in this ritual. Now, there's a story that I'm trying to remember the details of this. Right prior to Cameron showing up at Parsons' house when they first met, he'd had a vision, or he'd had a UFO sighting of a cigar-shaped ship. Then Cameron showed up, and he considered that a sign, that she was the one to play that role of the Scarlet Woman. And then Parsons himself died in 1952, as I recall, just prior to all the sightings of that over the Pentagon of whatever they saw there. And Cameron also took that as a sign as well that there was this connection between what Parsons was up to and UFOs, et cetera. And as time progressed over the years, she developed into an artist and started channeling a lot of paintings of like interdimensional beings. And I got a chance to see some of this stuff. There was a show in LA a few years back, and I actually bought a cold book that shows a lot of those different paintings and stuff she did. A lot of it, unfortunately, she destroyed at one point, and a lot of the materials in this exhibition were from paintings and stuff she had sold to other people that were pulled together back into this exhibit. And so anyway, at one point, she ended up out there in Pioneer Town. Greg mentioned Pioneer Town earlier, which is a stone's throw from Giant Rock, and became friends with George Van Tassel. So that would have been fun to hang out under the rock and hear them swap tales.
Yeah, really. She was a pretty fascinating person.
Mm-hmm.
I've started to think that she was much more fascinating than Parsons was, really, in many ways.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of aspects to her life, after Parsons. I mean, that was just the beginning. Right. She moved to Mexico in that artist colony there. I can't remember the name. Then later she was in San Francisco, and there was some like during the whole beat movement period, and there was a couple of years ago there were some movie reels that came out of her at a street bazaar in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And then
I've seen those. Yep.
And then later she was in some Hollywood films, and a film with a young Dennis Hopper, and became kind of a I guess, a hippie of some sort.
And now we have a TV show about Jack Parsons, and I don't know. Mm-hmm. I haven't watched it, so I don't know if she shows up in it. But
either have I.
Yeah.
I haven't either. I don't know how she couldn't.
Right, exactly. Yeah, she was pretty integral to the whole thing. One last one that I read today, actually, Andy Sinatra. No relation to Frank.
No, that's what I said in the book. At least no relation that Frank ever acknowledged.
Same initials as Adam Sane.
Exactly. Yeah, it's coincidence.
No, I think not.
So he was known as the Mystic Barber, was his handle, at least one of his titles. I guess he was also called, I'm pulling up the entry here, the, what did he call himself? The Mystic Tonsorial Artist from Brooklyn. And he's another guy that was really came to public attention through the Long John Nebel show. Nebel would have all these contactees on his show from, some that sounded somewhat reasonable to guys like Andy Sinatra, who are pretty off the wall. There's a looking at the entry here. He claimed that he was from Mars originally, and that originally from Mars, Sinatra at some point was psychically transported to Earth, where he came to inhabit the body of an Italian barber from Brooklyn. However, Sinatra was quick to point out his present appearance was quite different from the average Martian that stood 4 feet tall and was covered with white hair and reproductive organs on their heads.
Hey now.
You don't see that every day. No. And so he became famous for this psychic headgear he wore, which you can see in the book. I've seen there's a lot of different photos. A lot of the earlier photos, it was pretty primitive headwear, like a metal band, your typical tinfoil hat. Then the later versions had like this bazooka thing coming out of it. And at some point, he staged this big event in front of the United Nations where he was basically calling down the Space Brothers, or the Space Brothers inspired him to basically put on this event to save the United Nations from alien attack, from the, I guess he was working with the good aliens against the bad aliens. And those photos later showed up in Saucer Smear or Saucer News by Jim Moseley. So Moseley was somebody who got a kick out of his story. I write at the end of the book, the Mystic Barber's greatest claim to fame came on September 10th, 1962, when he attempted to make contact with flying saucers on a live broadcast of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. According to Jim Moseley, Sinatra got stiffed for a $100 appearance fee because his performance was, quote, incoherent, end quote. And if you listen to him on some of those episodes of here in Echo. I'm getting echo.
Oh, there you go. I didn't say that was homesick. But I later called for a start. Did your friends see the eclipse? Oh, no. The eclipse was written. Was in the Did your friends in Brooklyn?
Dang.
Yeah, he just goes on. He's got this heavy Brooklyn accent. Look, the alien, they come and talk to me.
So he was a character, and you can see from the photos in the book, he looked like a character.
I'd like to see video of him. Is there any video of him, like up on YouTube? I haven't actually looked.
Not that I've seen, but maybe the Carson footage. Perhaps that's still around. It was funny. A lot of those '60s or shows back in the day, a lot of that footage doesn't remain. A lot of it years ago, they destroy stuff like that just to make space for other shows.
Greg, are there any that like ones that's like your guys' favorites that stand out to you? That, because I'm sure out of all this, we barely scratched the surface on talking about this tonight. One that you particularly like?
Oh, I know which one I particularly like. Paulina Peavy. That's somebody I found just by doing research for the book. I found out that she was an artist. She was born in 1900, died in 1999.
Wow.
She grew up, I don't know if in poverty, but
she did a show with Andy Sinatra. Yes,
she was on Long John Neville, and she channeled her alien guide named Lacaimo while she was on the show with Long John Neville and Andy Sinatra. It's funny, you can tell when you listen to the show that he's just itching to get in there and start talking again. Like, okay, Long John, I'll shop for a second. Yeah. Paulina Peavy comes on, and she's got this mask. You can look her up online. There's a site that somebody maintains with her artwork, and she's at gallery showings and all this. Post after she died, she got discovered, of course. But yeah, her father refused to send her to college because he said that education was wasted on women. So she basically ran off and went to put herself through college, I believe, art school. And then she met some guy, and the guy was abusive and a drunk and beat her and all that. So she finally left him, and then she had these 2 kids she had to take care of. She didn't have enough money, so they had to go to an orphanage for a while till she got a decent job. She did not have an easy life. But she said sometime in the 1950s, I believe, strangely. No, it was earlier. It was 30s or 40s. I'm not looking at my my write-up here because she's my favorite. She said that she lived in LA for a while. So she went to Long Beach and visited this woman that who said was a psychic or something like that. And she told her she had a guardian angel or something like that. And this became this space person that she said was called Lacaimo, that would tell her what to, would give her advice, and she would channel her artwork from this alien person. And she wrote a book, I think, a self-published book in the 50s. You can see it online, too, if you go to the site, the Paulina Peavy site, called My Life with UFO. I think it's not even My Life with a UFO. There's no pronoun. It's just called My Life with UFO, where she talks about how, her lifelong contacts and, what her relationship was with this being. There's drawings of the being, too, which are amazing. They almost look like something like Stanislav Sukalski's stuff a little bit, the style. I'm
looking at her paintings right now. They're beautiful.
Yeah, they're stunning paintings. One of them's on my desktop right now, is my computer desktop. Because I think they're amazing. They're abstract, the ones that are on there. She did stuff that wasn't abstract, but she had a long and successful life as an artist, and she was teaching art in Los Angeles City School District for a while to make money. That's how she got her kids back from the orphanage. She got that job, and she claimed that she exhibited in galleries in LA. And on the website, her website, it's that's maintained by I don't know who, I guess a gallery. They said we can find no evidence that this happened. I found it. I was looking through newspapers and I put her name in, and one of the ads, an ad from the 1950s came up with her name in it for one of the galleries she said she exhibited at. It was an ad saying, Paulina Peavy, new works, February 25th through March 18th or something like that. So she was a working artist with gallery presence in Los Angeles in the 1950s. She moved to New York after that sometime in the late 50s. I think it stayed there for the rest of her life, which is how she ended up on Long John. So, not specifically somebody that was a contactee in the classic sense, because not a lot, but many of the entries in this book, we kind of expanded our definition. Anybody really that had any contact with, they said with space people, we would consider a contactee. That's how Wilhelm Reich got in there. So it's and Charles Hickson, who had repeated contacts, he said with the Pascagoula guy, with space brothers or space people that were telling him that he was supposed to bring a message of peace and love to the earth. That is a classic contactee message. But you don't think of that. All you think of him is him and Calvin Parker getting picked up and examined by those things that look like Kachina dolls.
Yeah, those weird creatures, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you can see.
I was wondering why you guys included them, because that seemed to me like more of a classic abductee, but then you have that message involved.
Yeah, if you read the book UFO Contactees Pascagoula that he co-wrote or probably dictated to this guy Menendez, I think his name is, or Melendez, I can't remember his name, but in the mid 70s or late 70s, he wrote a book called UFO Contactees Pascagoula, and he talked about the original thing, but he also talked about later contacts and messages he got, he said, from space people, and also subsequent sightings he had, one with his entire family. So, so it's his story is not as simple as you would think. And Calvin Parker actually has been out talking about his experiences now that he's in his 60s or 70s or something like that, the other guy in that. But I don't think he had the contactee type message that Charles Hickson did.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I don't think so. I think he did. Yeah. He just published a book, and he was on Coast to Coast, and he's been on a few other places. Actually, when he was on Coast to Coast, I was working that night, and I wrote to him, and I said, it'd be nice to talk to you sometime. And he friended me on Facebook, and I haven't done it yet. I should have him on my show. I really should. You should. Because do you? We're on Skype right now. Do you see my little avatar? That's the Pascagoula alien.
Yeah. Adam, is there one that stands out to you?
I like the Carl Hunrath and Wilbur Wilkinson story.
Oh, yeah.
And they were two guys. They were, as far as I'm able to figure out, they were electricians or electrical engineers who lived in Racine, Wisconsin, and caught the flying saucer bug, and ended up out in California to chasing the saucers all the way to George Adamski, and visited him at Palomar Gardens. And Hunrath claimed that he had created this invention called Bosco, which was basically a black box that was kind of like a free energy device, but it also created a magnetic field that would supposedly call down flying saucers. And apparently also he's having a conversation with Adamski there at one point, and he said it could also possibly bring down military aircraft, and Adamski didn't like that idea so much, and he shared that with Hunrath, and Hunrath basically said, "I don't care, we want the saucers."
There's a T-shirt.
And so they had a falling out. And Hunrath was associated with George Hunt Williamson, Hunrath and Wilkinson. And so they started kind of traveling around, and they went out to Prescott, Arizona, or Winslow, Arizona. I've heard different locations where Williamson was doing his work with shortwave radios, supposedly contacting the ETs, and also using that Ouija board type of device, so it was kind of a combination of science, technology, and also using magic or spiritualism to contact the ETs. And according to Nick Redfern in one of his books, I haven't tracked down all of this, but Nick told me he saw it somewhere in his research. They were also messing around with psychedelic drugs as part of this process or method of contacting the ETs. And at one point or another, they all started believing they were different ETs, or they were channeling ETs. It was all getting very strange. Then they ended up back in L.A., where Wilkerson had brought his wife out. Hunrath was unmarried, but at some point they had a little room set up at Wilkerson's house where they were they're basically channeling ETs and channeling the script that they were writing on butcher paper. It was hung up on the walls, and then they disappeared. And this was chronicled in a newspaper story from the LA Mirror, I think it was called. This was early on. This was like 52 or 53. And I don't have the passage in the book open, but basically the title of the story was that hubby is kidnapped by flying saucers. And they interviewed Wilkinson's wife, and she said that the two men had planned a rendezvous with a flying saucer out in the desert, and they rented a airplane from the Gardenia airport and took off from there, and that was the last they were ever seen. Dun,
Wow.
dun, dun.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
There was a rumor, I think, that Mosley put in one of his Saucer News magazines that that their plane had been found in the mountains, not crashed, but in pieces, as if it had been dismantled piece by piece. Which who knows where that it came from a crazy woman who used to write to him. The other thing is that I was trying to do research for this at one point, thinking I'd write a book on it, which is still kind of sitting there burbling up. Nick Redfern actually encouraged me to write it up, but I found out there was a Gardena airport, and then there was another airport right near there. But the Gardena airport, I believe, was the only one that actually rented planes, so that was a clue as to where it came from. And that I'm trying to figure out. The trail has gone cold, but I was trying to do some forensics, and there's a few places online that actually track down old records of air crashes, like everything. So I was trying to figure out, because you could say that they were never found, but maybe they were, and just nobody's ever bothered to check up on it. So
it's buried somewhere, and just all that information. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it, too, I've seen stuff posted on the web where people are going, this was a fake story made up. Well, I mean, that'd be something to do, too. You're checking out, try to track down if they ever found wreckage of the plane, look into these two individuals, Hunrath and Wilkinson, and, make sure they were actual people, because I don't doubt that they were, but the LA Mirror, they seem to have some like fringy stories back in the day, so I'm a little bit dubious on some level about all of this.
Sure. Well, gentlemen, this has been excellent. Where can people get the book? Is it? I heard that there's a color version coming out. Is that?
There will be.
Yeah.
Still working on it, but yeah,
a deluxe expensive color version.
Yeah, it'll be expensive. Amazon is the place to get it.
It is published by
me, basically. We published independently published because
Gorightly Press.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Might be the one and only book from Gorightly Press. There might be a Downward book, but basically did it ourselves, because I knew to do the type of book I wanted to do is going to be hard to get a publisher interested, or that there would have to be a lot of work kind of trying to get some publishers interested in. I just didn't want to put in that time, and so went the self-publication route. And I'm happy with how it's come out.
Yeah,
awesome.
You did a great job. It's a great big coffee table book, great conversation piece. I mean, it's it's really good. I'm gonna have to get a copy myself. I've just been reading Adams.
Yeah,
Cool.
with a stunning cover by Red Pill Junkie.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Shout out
I
to Red Pill.
another stunning cover.
Yeah, I mean, it's chock full of photographs. Almost every contactee has a photograph so you can see what they look like. There was a few in there that I couldn't find photographs, so we put old saucer photos in there. But yeah, a lot of cool photos, and yeah, the great cover, and kind of you can just at your leisure. They're, for the most part, the entries themselves are pretty quick read. So yeah, a perfect coffee table book, or if you want to haul that beast into the bathroom.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. We're going to close out this section, but we'll be back. Close out the show on Conspirinormal.
And we're back.
That we are.
So another fun-filled, not quite a story episode, but compilation. I like the compilation books. This is a really good, comprehensive, just overview of how bizarre contactee stories can get, and just without no overarching theme. Just here's the stories, here's the witness testimonies, and that sort of thing. I think it's a really cool idea. I think they did a really good job with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't get as far into the book as I thought that I really should, but I mean, we definitely had that was like a nearly 2-hour interview with those two guys.
Yeah, hour 45.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a big, cool.
We've
book.
had them both on before, so we kind of everybody knows each other, but part of the reason I didn't get a lot of chances because we went on a trip.
Yep.
Stepson is here from the Navy, and
when he says we, he means him and Sir Phil.
Yeah. Rob, we left Rob to man the fort, make sure.
I wasn't invited. I wouldn't have gone, but I wasn't invited. I'm just.
We need to invite Rob to things just so he can say, no, I can't go.
Exactly.
But thanks for inviting me anyway, guys. I really appreciate it.
We did invite Luke.
Yeah. And of course, he crapped out.
Crap.
But, Sir Fiel went.
Yes.
So we went down there with, Sir Fiel's kind of got invited last minute, and we did a little video of some things that we saw there. We went to Gulf Breeze, where there was a big UFO flap in the 80s.
Didn't see any UFOs.
We did not see any UFOs.
Tried to contact them with a shortwave, and we might have.
Yeah, we went to the Futuro house, which is like a UFO shaped house that is on Pensacola Beach, which is really cool.
And we're gonna try to contact the owners.
Yes. Yeah, there's a weird synchronicity there with the owners.
I'm like 95% positive that I know.
Yeah,
who that is.
We found out that the owners of the house live in Nashville. I mean, how strange is that?
Yep.
And we ended up somehow in Pensacola. We ended up in a Mardi Gras, the earliest in the country.
On the 12th night.
We posted that little 15-minute. What was it? 15 minutes?
Yeah,
is that how long it was?
In at 15.
Yeah,
it's my directorial debut.
Yeah, that's right. Sir Field's directorial debut with his GoPro camera. If you want to see that, it's on Patreon right now. It's an exclusive for our Patreons. We will probably put it up on YouTube eventually, but for a little while, we're just going to keep it up there just for the Patreons only. So. We got a nice surprise over Christmas.
Yes.
Actually, Christmas Day, we received a $100 Patreon. And I want to give a shout out to John J. Who really,
thank you, John.
Who really enjoys the show. He was someone that heard our Dr. Future episode, and he really appreciated it, and he decided that he wanted to give some money to the show to support what we do. So we want to thank him. Just honestly, truly. I mean, that made a world of difference. That doubled our Patreon earning like that. So we're at about like $200 a month, which I'm happy about. But, if you guys want to support us, we can bring even more quality to the show. I mean, we can use that to buy
We're officially
things.
Turning a profit after 6 years.
Yes, we are now turning a profit. Yeah. And to go to Patreon and to find all of our other stuff, where do they need to go, Mr. Rob?
Patreon.com/Conspirinormal. And there's various tiers. Most of the content is available for, I think, $5 a month subscription. There's other tiers. There's I think $10 a month. We got a bunch of wallpapers up there and various other things. But if you just want most of the bonus content, the bonus episodes, and the the link to the new video and all that stuff's the $5 subscription. If you don't want to subscribe and you don't want a monthly bill, you can do a one-time donation at our website at conspirinormal.com. And if you want to help support the show, but you don't want to spend money doing it, you can always just give us a 5-star review on iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you listen, and just tell your friends about us.
Absolutely. And by the way, happy 2019.
Yes.
Yay. It's going to be a good year, Adam.
It is going to be a good year, man.
I feel it.
There's going to be a lot of parties, Rob.
Lots of parties.
We're going lots of places.
Lots of karaoke.
Yeah.
Lots of scotch.
I'm feeling it.
It's going to be a good
year. More liver damage, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, who needs that anyway?
I'm up for it.
All right, guys. Next week, I've got scheduled Robert Bonomo. We're going to be talking to him about a film that he made called The 21 Faces of God, and that is about tarot. And the week after that, we're going to be bringing our good friend Soraya back on the show on Where Did the Road Go? From Where Did the Road Go? So we've been going, Surfiel and I have been going on there a lot lately. So it felt like it's time to get Soraya back on the show. It's been 3 years since he's been like kind of solo. He's come on a lot for like roundtables and all that, but just to get him back solo, I think is important to do. So, all right, guys, stay tuned. We got a lot of good things coming. I'm really excited about this year, and we'll see you next week on Conspirinormal. Break it all, Rob.
What you had there was the detonation of a 15-megaton cosmic missile. Bring me a cookie.